What's up, Team Moose here. Here is my throwback segment where I talk about the films that turns 10, 20, 30, and 40 this week. Alright, the films turning 10 this week is the box office flop that was Tomorrowland. Now, of course, Tomorrowland it was pretty much based on like one of the Disneyland's rise and whatever. It, of course, where like this genius inventor and a teen scientist enthusiast embark on a alternate dimension known as Tomorrowland, and you had the likes of George Clooney, Brett Robertson, Keegan Michael Key, Tim McGraw, Katherine Hahn. I mean, sadly, of course, it was directed by Brad Bird, who gave us like The Incredibles, Iron Giant, Ratatouille, and many. He made his live action debut with Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. So this was like his second live action film. Sadly, it was a complete flop. And it actually wasn't that bad of a film either. I mean, it's probably not like Brad Bird's best work or anything, but it was actually enjoyable. I thought George Clooney was pretty good. Britt Robertson. I like the visuals here. It's such a shame that hardly no one wants you to go see it, but it is what it is, I guess. Oh, yeah, you also had Hugh Laurie. That was pretty cool to see there, too. Alright, also turning 10 is Poltergeist. The remake, that is. With Sam Rockwell. Of course, follows a family who arrives at their new home and begins experiencing paranormal occurrences. So many people trashed the remake. Other than, like, the ending, I think they could have done a better job with the ending. I actually did not mind the remake so much. I mean, it wasn't obviously was it as good as the original? Definitely not. You know, the original is one of the classic horror movies of all time. You know, they're here. I mean, they also actually did have that line of "they're here," but they pretty much cut like just had her just say "there," and didn't even say the whole thing. So that's unfortunate there. I actually thought it was actually a fine one. It was directed by Gil Keenan, who would go on to direct the recent Ghostbusters movie last year. I actually did not mind the Poltergeist remake. It definitely had some of its it had its flaws, but I still thought it was pretty creepy at times. Again, was it as good as the original? Definitely not. You know, of course, you had Sam Rockwell was in this one, Jared Harris. It was actually not a bad remake in my opinion. So it is what it is, I guess. Anyway, uh, film turning 20 is, let's say here, Star Wars: Revenge of the Sith. This is actually my favorite out of the prequel. I admit. You know, I actually just rewatched Revenge of the Sith back in theaters last month, and the movie is still great. You know, of course, I still remember watching this one in theaters at the time. It was enjoyable. It was just a lot of fun to check out. I mean, again, this was actually I think like George Lucas's like last for this was actually the last Star Wars live action movie to hit theaters until like The Force Awakens, and even like people who are not fans of the prequels will tell you that Revenge of the Sith is definitely their favorite out of the prequels. It's just so enjoyable, so fun. You know, I just really. It's a shame it didn't really get as much love and all, but it's still really decent one in my opinion. Of course, you had like Anakin like turning to the dark side of the Force, which was always cool to see. I mean, it's such a really great one in my opinion. One that is not good though is Dominion prequel to The Exorcist, starring Stellan Skarsgård. Pretty much like a prequel to the iconic horror movie The Exorcist. You know, where like Father Lancaster Marin, played by Stellan Skarsgård, focuses his energy on helping to with an archaeological dig in the northern part of Canada here, and it's a terrible follow up. You know, it was so boring. Like nothing about it was all that interesting. It was just a terrible one. I think Freddie Holland directed this one, which yeah. All right. Film turning, frankly, to be honest, the only good Exorcist movie in my opinion is the original. I mean, the recent one that David Gordon Green directed was a bust. Hopefully, Mike Flanagan will make his Exorcist great, but we'll see. Now, film turning 30 is the Oscar-winning Best Picture film, Braveheart. I can't believe that Braveheart was released that early. I always felt like it was released a little later, but anyway. Braveheart, of course, starring, directed by Mel Gibson. Uh, The story, of course, is inspired by Blind Harry's 15th century epic poem and the acts and ideas of illustrators here. And of course, it is about William Wallace, the in late 13th century Scottish warrior who led the Scots to the First War. I mean, you will take our lives, but you will never take our freedom. One of the most iconic lines in movie history. Of course, the movie did win Best Picture. Mel Gibson actually won Best Director, if I'm not mistaken, too. So there's that. I mean, Braveheart is really iconic. It's definitely a great one with Mel Gibson. Like, say what you want about him nowadays. He was great here. Of course, Sophie Mercurio was also great. I believe Brandon Gleeson was in the Braveheart too. I mean, the makeup and stuff is great. The original Braveheart stands the test of time, and it's an iconic one. All right. Also turning 30 is Tales from the Hood. Of course, directed by Rusty Cunningham. The film pretty much represents four short urban themed horror stories based on the problem concepts that affect the black community in the order of police corruption, domestic abuse, racism, gang violence, and all. You had the likes of Clarence Williams III, DeAndre Bonds, David Allen Greer. I mean, who? Because of course at the time it was really rare to see like black led horror movies at the time, and so it was really cool them actually release one here. And from the Hood is a really cool horror anthology. Some really cool horror stories throughout. I mean, if you guys have not seen Tales of the Hood or Tales from the Hood, I'd say definitely give that one a go. They did a couple of sequels which wasn't so good, but yeah, nothing beats that original. All right. Phil turning 40 is the Richard Pryor classic Brewster's Million. You know, of course, this is based on the the very popular novel of the same name. And it's pretty much focuses on a minor league baseball pitcher who accepts a challenge to spend 30 million in 30 days in order to inherit 300 million from his great uncle. You had comedy legends like Richard Pryor, John Candy. I mean, John Candy obviously was a living legend. With Uncle Buck. Uh, with Plane, Trains, and Automobiles. This was, I believe, like one of his earliest films, if I'm not mistaken, because this came out like before Uncle Buck and Planes, Trains, and all. His chemistry with Richard Pryor was great. And you had Stephen Collins, from Step Heaven fame. There's that. But Brewster's Million is a comic classic. The chemistry between Richard Pryor was also a comedy living legend. And of course, Richard Pryor, John Candy were both great in this. If you guys never seen Brewster's Million, do yourself a favor, give it a go. It's a really common classic. Also turning 40 is Rambo First Blood Chip Part 2, which is, of course, directed by George P. Cosmos, starring Sylvester Stallone. Also written by James Cameron, which I always keep forgetting James Cameron was a writer on this one. It's not really to remember, to be honest. It's probably my least favorite out of the Rambo movies. The first one will always be First Blood. I actually did not mind the last one that got released. Uh, and of course, you had like Charles Napper was in this one. Uh, of course, you got Stallone, who reprised his role as Vietnam War veteran John Rambo. Uh, and of course, plot is inspired by the Vietnam War POW MIA issue, and where like Rambo gets released from prison, and in a deal with the U.S. government to document the existence of missing POWs in Vietnam. And it's a really decent, it's a decent follow. Just not like my favorite out of the franchise, but it's pretty fun, worth giving. Like, who doesn't love seeing Rambo, take down people, and it's a really decent one. All right, and also turning 40 is boy, we had John Rambo and James Bond releasing the same day. Just imagine that. That is, of course, A View to Kill, starring Roger Moore, which was actually the seventh and final appearance of Roger Moore as James Bond. I mean, my favorite Bond will probably maybe still be Pierce Brosnan or maybe Sean Connery, whatever. But Roger Moore was a still really cool Bond. You had Grace Jones, who, if I'm not mistaken, I believe Grace Jones was like the first like black actress to play a Bond girl. If I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong there, but I remember like I remember reading somewhere that she was like the first black girl to play Bond girl. So that was really cool. Of course, you had Chris Walken, the late Tana Roberts. Of course, like you have Bond, who is pitted up against Max Zorman, played by Chris Walken, who plans to destroy California's Silicon Valley. Chris Walken was a great Bond villain, like maybe one of the most underrated, appreciated Bond villains. But he was great. Uh, the action and everything was great. I mean, it's a really decent Bond film. I believe it was like the 14th Bond movie at the time. Obviously, Roger Moore was coming up, like, was following in the footsteps of the likes of Timothy Dalton, Sean Connery at the time, and A View to Kill is a really decent Bond film. I mean, kind of below, like, out of all the Roger Moore Bond movies, kind of below which Roger Moore Bond movie is even your favorite. View to Kill is definitely up there, but yeah, I mean, obviously Daniel Craig's a great Bond too, so there's that. Anyway, let me let you guys. Which of these films stand out to you the most? To me, the 10-year one is going to go to Tomorrowland. 20-year one is Revenge of the Sith. 30-year one is Braveheart. And 40-year one is A View to Kill. Drop comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that bell for notification. This is Timmy.